Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Leading for Wellness. My name is Liesl Bernard, and I'm really excited about our guest today, Sierra Simpson, who is the founder and CEO of BrilliantBiome. Sierra, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm excited to talk about the microbiome with you and how we can lead happier, healthier lives using it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I would love to start out to share a little bit about your background and how you got started and with your journey on researching microbiome.
Yeah. So it all started with me doing research on the East Coast, and I am one of those mosquito girlies. So I was just getting eaten alive. I also like to do a lot of like hiking. And so I got really sick. I had these insane fevers. I didn't know what was wrong with me. They tested me for Lyme. They tested me for a bunch of different things. And over a year, I ended up taking antibiotics for almost 10 days out of the month for the entire year. And I saw major changes in me. I gained a lot of weight. I was anxious. Before that, I was a really intense athlete. I was a nationally ranked track cyclist in college, swimmer, on the rowing team. You name it, I was out there doing it. And after that year, I just couldn't function anymore. I had no energy. I was stressed when I would eat because my stomach was going to hurt. I was also stressed when I didn't eat because my stomach was going to hurt. And then I had the epiphany that I'm a scientist. Why don't I use my brain to figure out what's going on? And so that led me to the microbiome. And I thought, okay, how can I replenish my microbiome and how can I use that to fix my health? And that really started the journey of BrilliantBiome a long, long time ago. It became fully formed when I went to do my PhD in neuroscience at the Scripps Research Institute. And I was thinking about substance use disorders. And so I thought, how can our microbiome play a role in substance use? And we actually discovered that there are molecules that are released by the microbiome that can totally change your brain and your behavior. And that's how we fully fleshed out moving into the gut-brain axis space.
That's fascinating. Was that malaria, or were you just sick from getting too many insect bites?
They think that it was malaria, and eventually I got a bunch of different treatments that ended up resolving the issue. But by then, the harm from all of those antibiotics had really kind of taken hold.
Yeah, I think most people don't realize how bad antibiotics can be for your microbiome, right? I grew up luckily with a dad that never wanted us to take on antibiotics, and I'm very grateful for that. But I think it's so easily prescribed in the doctor's office these days. The minute you go in and they don't know what's wrong with you, they give you antibiotics, and that's the worst thing you can do for your microbiome. What actually happens when you take antibiotic, and what happens to your gut, your microbiome at the same time?
Yeah, you think, oh, okay, I take antibiotics for a bacterial infection. Yes, it kills off that bacteria, but it's also killing a bunch of good bacteria too if they're susceptible to that kind of antibiotic. So it's really critical that if you do need to take an antibiotic, which antibiotics are still an important clinical tool, that you're repopulating your good microbiome at the same time, because otherwise you leave the niches open. You can kind of think of your microbiome like a forest, and an antibiotic comes in and it burns everything down. The forest has to regrow, but without the evolution of the forest growing together, sometimes there can be a microbe that's not necessarily a good one that shoots up, and that's when you start having other problems like C. diff, if you've heard of that, where, it causes extreme diarrhea. It's a very hardy microbe that is not always pathogenic when you have a healthy microbiome, but if you have antibiotics, it can cause a major flare.
Amazing. I think just for the average listener, I think we talk a lot about microbiome. We hear a lot about it in the news, but what is the difference between microbiome and microbes? Because we have microbes all over our bodies, right? Is microbiome just in the gut, or is it everywhere on your body as well?
Yeah. So you can imagine yourself covered in a cloud of microbes at all times. We're these little spaceships for them to call home. And you have a skin microbiome, you have a gut microbiome. Your microbiome, if we harvest your feces and we look at your microbiome, the ecology of the microbes that live in your feces, that's different than the ecology of maybe swabbing your skin in one place and seeing the ecology of the microbes that live in that place. And even the oral microbiome, all the microbes that live in our mouth, there's different niches within your microbiome. So some microbes that live near your teeth may be different than the microbes you would get if you're swabbing inside of your cheek. And they all live in a harmonious way to actually protect us from outside bad microbes. They educate our immune system. They play a really important role. All of the microbes that live on us, as a whole, we can call them the microbiome, play a role in our health and how we live our lives.
And how can we best make sure that we have the best possible microbiomes on our body for immunity, for energy, for emotional health? Because I know our gut affects our mind and how we think and how we feel as well. You've obviously studied this for years and years. What are sort of tips that you can give to someone to repopulate their microbiome after taking on antibiotics and then to make sure you're as healthy as possible on a daily basis?
Yeah, we always love to say health from the inside out. So that really starts from what you're putting in your mouth. Whole foods, eating the rainbow, eating, grass-fed, really good proteins. You don't want to skimp on your proteins because they're not going to have good fats that are going to feed your microbes, that keep them healthy and happy long term. In terms of skin, your microbiome plays a really important role in regulating the lipids that are circulating in your body. So they make you appear youthful longer. They give you more skin elasticity. In terms of mental health, we know that short chain fatty acids, which are released by the microbiome after they digest fiber in your diet, are really critical for reducing anxiety. They reduce inflammation in your immune system. So supporting those. And I think everybody loves it because I tell them you can also eat a lot of hard cheeses. Like Parmesan cheese has a lot of short chain fatty acids in it. So, go wild, eat your cheese.
Eat your fat. Yeah.
Yeah, eat your fat. And also, we're humans, right? So have a glass of wine. It's going to have some good polyphenols in there, everything in moderation. And then if you do have to take antibiotics, supporting your microbiome after that, eating fermented things like kimchi and sauerkraut. And one of my favorite things, which, American palates don't always love so much, is natto. And it's fermented soybeans with bacteria, B. subtilis. But it's a really protein packed, amazing fermented superfood that if you want to supercharge your brain, natto is a really great way to do it.
I've never even heard of that. Where do you find that? Probably in a health food store, right?
You can find it at Whole Foods. Kind of a higher end, like Air One will have it. Yeah.
Okay.
You can also make your own by getting a culture of bacteria, B. subtilis, off of Amazon, and I can share some recipes for you to post.
That would be great. Yeah, maybe we can list that below in the notes for the podcast.
Yeah.
There's so many probiotics, prebiotics, postbiotic products out there, and every one of them claim that they help your microbiome. But in my mind, if the product is not live, does it really work? And what are your thoughts on that?
That's a great question that I think most people aren't really sure on. And actually, the answer is that the microbes don't necessarily have to be live to have a beneficial effect on your body. So when the other microbes see, say, a dead microbe, it can still communicate information to them that microbe has been present. And so a mix of all of these things is going to be critical. But what's the most critical thing is understanding where your microbiome is and what are the components that it needs. Just taking supplements willy-nilly or adding in a probiotic because it's got the nicest packaging is not the best approach. You want to have a diagnostic that tells you this is where your microbiome is, what are your health goals, and how do you get there? And that's really why we founded BrilliantBiome, was to make that happen.
Make that test. So BrilliantBiome actually is a test that you can do to assess your microbiome health, right? Can you tell us more about it and how that works?
Yeah, we have a discovery test, and that's basically just so you can see what's in your microbiome. We do shotgun metagenomic sequencing, and there's a couple different kinds of sequencing that you can do in the microbiome to see what's going on. One of them is a transcriptomics, so you can look at what are the microbes making at that time. There's 16S sequencing, which is, it'll give you a high level idea of what microbes are there, but not necessarily give you down to the species resolution. And as the microbiome field matures, we understand that even low abundance of specific species are actually really important to understand. So that's why we went to shotgun sequencing, which gives us all of that information. It's like the difference between having a recipe and having the entirety of the internet of information available is the kind of sequencing that we do. And then we can say, okay, this is what your microbiome looks like. And it's super easy. We send you a collection kit at home. There's a flushable collection device that you use so that you don't have to put anything gross into your trash, which is, nobody likes to deal with poop. But this makes it really easy. And then in 2 to 3 weeks, you have your results back to you about how you can live a happier and healthier life.
So what do the results look like? Do they give you specific information about your microbiome and what you can do to actually improve it? Like, tell me a bit more about the results and how people can use that.
Yeah, our results are quite comprehensive. Most of the reports range from 50 to 70 pages.
Wow.
We also require you to take a pretty extensive health survey. So then your results are customized to you based on what you're concerned about, your age, your gender, how you relate to people that are in similar cases as you are, and how you relate to our larger population. And then we give you what we call a snapshot, so that you have a 2-page summary of what are your important microbes, which microbes we think you're missing, how you can influence increasing those microbes, either through lifestyle or supplement options, and then provide all of that information for you to also take back to your primary care provider in a way that you can integrate that into your normal lifestyle choices.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Would it be great if at some point, pretty soon here, hopefully, that a microbiome test becomes part of your annual exam? If the microbiome is so important for our health, why do medical doctors not do this kind of test as part of your annual exam? It just seems to me as like, why did I don't do it? It just doesn't make any sense to me.
I think you hit the nail on the head. It's been pretty challenging up until now to do inexpensive sequencing on large scales for the microbiome. Only in the last 10 years did we really have the sequencing technology to make that happen. So at the FDA level, the microbiome is still a little bit the Wild West. We're collecting a lot of real world data, and that is my goal. I would love to have an FDA approved microbiome test that is insurance reimbursable, that anybody can use, that gives us the kind of detail that will actually help us clinically. Because we can do qPCR where we look at 1 or 2 species for a specific indication, but we're really at the point where we need to be looking at the entire ecology of your microbiome and how it relates to everything, including, say, the absorption of the medicines that you're taking, or how they relate to your health goals.
Amazing. Yeah, I would imagine that with sort of the new developments in our healthcare administration, hopefully, alternative ways of testing and alternative health modalities will be more encouraged and not, I think, run by the pharmaceutical companies, because I'm sure that wasn't always a priority in the past. So really excited about that, because I think we can all benefit from really understanding our bodies at that granular level and not just taking a pill to affect the symptom, but really getting to the root cause of why we're feeling the way we're feeling, whether it's mental or physical. And from what you're saying, the gut microbiome or all the microbes in our body have such an effect on our health in so many levels. Let's just talk about depression, right? I think, there's a lot of studies out there that your microbiome in your gut really affects your brain and how you feel and how you think, and also affects the way you crave food,
Yeah.
And tell us more about that, how the gut brain sort of affects how we crave and what we want to eat, not always to our best, for our best results.
I always joke that we're actually just a spaceship for microbes to run around and get what they need, because it only takes 28,000 genes to make a human, but you have like 8 million unique genes that are regulated by your microbiome that do functions for us constantly. And so, yeah, your microbes can cause you to crave things because they want you to feed them the things that they need to survive. And I don't know, have you ever tried going keto or changing your diet really significantly?
Oh, absolutely. I was a big keto person for quite a while.
But do you remember what happened when you went from being an omnivore to doing more keto? Do you remember what happened?
Yeah, I almost went through withdrawals, and I had headaches and cravings like crazy for sugar and carbs and all that stuff. I'm sure that was my microbiome shouting out at me, give me carbs, right?
And we call that the keto flu, because you're having a major die-off of organisms that are not getting fed their normal diet that you've been feeding them for years. And their new microbes are coming up and replacing them. And in that process, you're changing your entire metabolism, right? Not only because of the diet that you're eating, but because our microbes communicate directly through our body and our brain through the metabolites that they release. And so those major changes actually play a really important role in our health and how we use our microbiome to translate into a healthier state.
Amazing. I think there's so many people addicted to sugar, which obviously feeds Candida. I think a lot of women especially struggle with that, and constantly crave sugar, and it's very hard to actually get rid of it. I don't know what the relationship is between Candida and microbiome, but that's a topic that a lot of women struggle with. Can you highlight a little bit about how you can get rid of sort of the fungus within bodies, and how that plays in with microbiome?
Yeah, our diets play a really important role in this. The more sugar you're feeding Candida, the happier it is. And of course, when you try to tell your Candida, no, I'm not going to give you any more sugar, you get this roaring signal to your brain that says sugar, 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 sugar. And it's really hard to ignore that, right? In order to offset that, we say, you can increase your levels of protein, increase your levels of supplementing short chain fatty acids, and increase really critical keystone species like Akkermansia that are going to create a healthier microbiome environment and push those microbes out naturally, or the fungi or whatever infection you have out naturally.
Yeah, it takes time though. It doesn't happen overnight. So you got to really stick with it and be disciplined and override those cravings, in order to change your microbiome. I think it's really fascinating.
Any intervention that is major, especially, it depends on how messed up your microbiome is. The more messed up it is, the slower you have to take the steps to fix it. Because if you try to swing your microbiome one way or another, it's going to be really uncomfortable for you. And it's not sustainable if you have like bad stomach aches, or if you're having major diarrhea because you're trying to take 10 new probiotics at the same time. You really need to be very carefully curating how you go about doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know lifestyle also affects your microbiome. Exercise. I've attended a couple of the Dr. Joe Dispenza retreats, and I know you also test for the microbiome, the changes in microbiome through meditation. Just 1 week of meditation consistently affects your microbiome. Do you want to talk a little bit about lifestyle, meditation, exercise, and how that affects microbiome?
Yeah, yeah. We love meditation. I think the work that Dr. Joe is doing is phenomenal. He really has invested in showing how meditation plays a role in our health overall by deeply phenotyping people who do his retreats. And one of the things we look at is the microbiome. We have several papers that are going to be published this year, so keep your eyes peeled for them. They're really, I can't tell too much because I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but mindfulness is really critical. Our brain needs to be able to sense our bodies. And if we're in a state of stress and we're not within coherence with our body, then our microbiome really isn't going to be able to talk to our brain to make an effectual bi-directional communication. And there's three main ways that our microbiome talks to our brain. One is through the metabolites that it can release. The second one is through our vagus nerve, which is like our secondary spinal cord. And that innervates our heart, our lungs, all of our intestines. It's a direct connection pathway for our brain to sense our periphery. But if it gets dysregulated, then it cuts all of the information off at our neck. And that's horrible. A good way to recondition your vagus nerve is to do facial cold plunges. So you can take a bowl of water, you fill it halfway with water, you freeze it overnight. In the morning, you put cold water in, and then you do a 10-second breath in. You put your face in for 10 seconds to the crown of your hair. You don't have to get your hair wet. And I'm not a full cold plunge girly. I do not want to get into a tub. Not everybody has them. I think for women too, we have to be careful about how we stress our bodies with cold. But then you repeat that 3 times and it reinvigorates the vagus nerve so that our brain and our body are more coherent with each other. And then also through our hypothalamic pituitary axis, which is our stress, rest, and digest axis. And by doing things like meditation, you're bringing down all of those stress levels. You're reinvigorating your body as you're becoming more aware of it. And by doing that, then your microbiome and your brain can work better together to improve your health lifestyle overall.
Amazing. So, if people just change their diet, but they don't change their lifestyle, they don't exercise, it's like, well, you almost have to do everything in order to have that symbiosis, in all aspects of your life, right?
I think you get positive feedback over the way. So if you start by changing your diet, your microbiome improves 30%. And with that, then you're getting less stressed because your microbiome is reducing your stress, reducing your inflammation. And then you start to have like a little bit more, less brain fog, more energy. Then you can effectualize those changes in other aspects of your life as well.
Yeah, absolutely. How quickly can you change your microbiome? Like, so you do your test, you can do the BrilliantBiome test today, and then with advice, you can change your lifestyle, change your diet, change your stress levels, meditate. How quickly do you see changes in the microbiome? I know with meditation and the studies that you guys have done, you can see it within days. But, for the average person out there, how important it is to how often do you need to test your microbiome, and how quickly can you affect results unless you're doing it intensely like a retreat?
We recommend every 3 to 4 months. It usually takes about that long for people to get into new habits and stay on those habits for long enough for it to make a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
You can see major changes in the microbiome if you do significant dietary intervention. So say you go from being an omnivore to being vegan, you're going to see a pretty quick shift within the first couple weeks. But if you're a relatively healthy person and you want to optimize yourself, I know we have a lot of entrepreneurs out there who are burning that midnight oil. They're working really hard, but they want to have more brain clarity. They want to have more energy. Then it does take some time to tweak that microbiome. And if you're mostly healthy, you really don't need to be testing your microbiome more than once every 4 months unless you have an antibiotic intervention or some other major issue.
Okay, that makes sense. I know you work also with optimizing performance for athletes. I would love you to share a little bit about that. I know a lot of people in our audience are also athletes and want to improve their peak performance. What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, so one of the new things that we've added into our test is how the microbiome impacts mitochondrial health. So we
Mm.
look at how fats are being delivered to your mitochondria, are the bile acid pathways working really well? And then I also developed a mitochondria test with Dr. Hemel Patel at
Mm-hmm.
UCSD, where we can take both of these tests together and say, this is how we can optimize your microbiome to output more energy. And this is where your energy is. So they go hand in hand to give you the best results. And we've worked with, D1 athletes, professional athletes. Sometimes we're over supplementing, right? You
Mm-hmm.
go to 10 different doctors, they're all telling you something, and you've got this long list of things that are supposed to be healthy. But really, sometimes it's like paring those back, seeing where you're at, and then rebuilding slowly so that it's sustainable for your body to be running at peak performance.
Yeah, they say that Americans have the most expensive pee in the world, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
there's so many people taking so many supplements, but it all gets washed out in your body. And like you said, it's not always to your best interest to have that many competing supplements in your body at any one time.
Yeah, you can
That's
overhack yourself.
yeah, that's amazing. Um, I know that there's a lot of research also on breast milk, and how important it is to breastfeed your baby if you can possibly do that, and how that helps populate the microbiome in the baby as well. Can you highlight a little bit about that and the science behind all that?
Yeah, women's health is near and dear to my heart. I obviously, being a woman in science, I think it's important to educate everyone and make that education available. And breast milk it's liquid gold, right? It's a remarkable fluid that we make when we have babies. And most of the breast milk uh, metabolites are not actually for the baby. It's to feed the growing microbiome inside of the baby so that it has the appropriate oligosaccharides so that those microbes can then educate the baby's immune system and reduce the number of allergies and reduce the incidence of asthma. I mean, there's a lot of really amazing work that shows that dirt is good for us and that having exposure to microbes and being fed the appropriate nutrition is really critical. And starting from your first day of life, even how you're born, right? Whether you come as a C-section baby or if you are born vaginally, we're meant to go through the birth canal and to get exposed to all of those microbes when we can't come out. Our mom is imparting a majority of her microbiome through that process. And even now clinically, they'll swab mom and then swab the baby so that C-section
They
babies
get
are
them.
getting the same microbes that babies born vaginally get.
Yeah, I wonder how many doctors actually educate women on that, because I feel like very often the C-section is like, oh, just an easier, quicker option to, you don't have to wait for a natural birth to occur. You can just schedule your birth. But I think there's so many benefits from going through a natural birth and then being able to breastfeed your baby right away. So yeah, it's great that you're doing a lot more research and education on that. How does your microbiome change as women go through premenopause, postmenopause, and any advice that you can give on the research that you've done in that area?
Yeah. As our hormones change, our microbes change because they're sensitive to hormonal circumstances. My favorite probiotic for women going through pre and perimenopause is Lactobacillus reuteri. It's a super microbe that is really good at helping us regulate our hormones. And for people on HRT as well, like you're having you're trying to replace a normal cycle, but it's challenging, right? We're doing it
Mm-hmm.
with skin. You use suppositories. There's a lot of different routes. Not everybody gets the same absorption levels based on their own metabolism. And so, yeah, supporting through microbiome is really critical. This is definitely still an emerging research field,
Mm-hmm.
but also eating as much fiber as you can, we know is going to give you the best keystone species as you move through those changes.
Amazing. Yeah, it's encouraging to see how much more research is being done specifically for women. I think in the past it was, general population, and they kind of put men and women in the same category. And we're so different when it comes to our biology and the different phases in our lives. So that's really exciting. And I appreciate all the work that you're doing in that space as well. Um, any advice on autoimmune disorders? I know that microbiome has a very big effect on our immunity and our autoimmune system in our bodies. I would love some insight into that, because I know that that's sort of an overwhelming topic for most people. Autoimmune disease, like what does that even mean, and how do you affect it? But I honestly believe that microbiome has a huge impact on our autoimmune system, and would love, your thoughts on that.
Yeah, yeah. Our microbiome educates our immune system as we age. And so when we have excess inflammation, it can have a feedback loop on our microbiome, right? So one way our microbiome helps us regulate autoimmunity is through short chain fatty acids. Those receptors are on our immune cells.
Is that like omega-3, krill oil, things like that? Or,
it's
give us an example of that.
Yeah, it's more like butyrate, acetate, and propionate. They're these really small fatty acids that are released by the microbiome when they digest fiber in your diet. And I'm not talking like Benefiber where you stick it into your water and you drink it. We've got to eat some veggies. We've got to eat some fruits, whole foods, whole grains. It's really critical because we make grams and grams and grams of this every day. And it's basically nature's GLP-1s. I think one thing that's come out of GLP-1 work is that we see that there's this huge reduction in inflammation for women with, say, like PCOS or Hashimoto's disease. Even microdosing those GLP-1s really brings down your inflammation. And by optimizing your microbiome, you can do the same thing. Those short chain fatty acids, they regulate and can upregulate GLP-1 activity, leptin. They can change the way that your body perceives sugar signals and make you less or more insulin resistant based on your diet. So by creating a good keystone species environment for your microbiome, you can reduce the symptoms of your autoimmunity significantly.
Amazing.
And we've worked with plenty of people who have been very successful, for instance, with Hashimoto's, bringing down their antibodies completely, reducing all of their inflammation. But it takes time and it takes lifestyle changes. It's not just, there's no magic pill, right?
Yeah. Discipline.
Well, and our food system is broken. It's hard to choose things that are healthy for you in the market that are easy and convenient, because most of those things are full of stabilizers. And what do those stabilizers do? They're antimicrobial. You shouldn't have a loaf of bread that can sit on your counter for a month and not rot. You want to eat food that will rot, is basically really the take.
You should shop every day for healthy food, fresh food, fresh meat, fresh vegetables, and bread. Like you said, if your bread lasts more than 2-3 days, then you probably shouldn't be eating it.
And
so much processed food in our diet. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So just to come back to the autoimmune answer that you gave, can you give us some, sort of specific example if someone is struggling with inflammation or an autoimmune like Hashimoto's? What are the, say, 5 things that you would recommend, or 5 supplements that you recommend they take? Because I think that's a very common issue right now, is the inflammation in people's bodies.
The first thing I would cut out is dairy. The second thing I'd cut out is coffee. Coffee is very full of mold and can exacerbate what our microbiome sees when we're having coffee. And stimulants in general are not good for inflammation.
Interesting.
The third thing is, if you're going to do grains, I buy my grains from Canada or France or Italy. Like, they have better regulations on the pesticides that are used in grains. And you would be amazed. I can't tell you. And this came from an insight from people who go to Europe and they eat pasta and they're like, I've been so gluten intolerant for forever, but I ate pasta and I lost weight and I felt great. It's because it's not the grains. It's like all of the preservatives, all of the pesticides, all of the
GMO.
all the things that are on our foods. So those top 3 things, and then increasing as much fiber as you possibly can. And there's lots of ways to do this. It's not just having to eat kale. You can be pretty flexible in how you get your fibers, but doing them as whole foods is really critical. Mm-hmm. And in terms of supplements, I really like a tributyric acid. It's a good starting place for somebody who has lots of inflammation. And
where do you get that? Where do you get that?
You can find it on Amazon.
Put that name in Amazon.
Yeah, my favorite one is called Beauty Caps. It's BUTY caps. Okay. I can give you the link that we can include here, but it's made in Spain and it helps support all of those short chain fatty acid producers. And then in terms of microbes, including fermented things into your diet. The more fermented things you do, and sometimes people who are really inflamed with autoimmune disorders, you'll find that this may cause an increase in histamines and you have a response to it initially. So it does take time. Go slowly. Go, okay, I'm going to add in, vegetables, an extra vegetable to every meal this week. That's a good place to start. I'm going to reduce my intake and not have any milk. In particular for thyroid, there's milk globulins that look like thyroid antigens. So you can also, it can exacerbate your response if you're a Hashimoto's individual. But yeah, I think those are probably the top 5 that I would do.
Amazing.
For someone with immune issues.
That's great advice. We'll definitely add some of the links below because I think there's a lot of people that would want to access that. And so how can people get access to your BrilliantBiome test or access to you?
Yeah, we work with a variety of providers, but you can also order a test at our website at BrilliantBiome.com. And then we offer health coaching and gut coaching as well with registered nutritionists. And stay tuned. I'm going to be doing some gut retreats. I think we want to do a big retreat in Costa Rica where we're going to source food from really amazing soil and help people reset their microbiome through lifestyle choices in the next year.
Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Sierra, for joining us. I really appreciate your amazing insights. I'm looking forward to having you at one of our events coming up here in San Diego shortly, and maybe you have speak at that event as well. But I will, people can contact you at brilliantbiome.com or on LinkedIn. I assume, is there any other things that you want to mention that people can access you on?
Yeah, please send me a LinkedIn request. I'm always happy to, chat with you, meet with you, see how we can help optimize you as a person. You can email us at hello@brilliantbiome.com. That goes to my assistant and she triages. I fully believe the universe brings me the people that I need, and we'll make it happen. We'll help you live a happier and a healthier life.
Thank you. Thank you for the amazing work that you do. And I can't wait to hear more. I'd love to have you on the show once all this research comes out on meditation. And maybe you can share more about that. But thank you so much for your time today. It was such a joy to speak with you. And how brilliant are you? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.